They keep the lower classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the money. What conspiracy theory has a high chance of being true? There's a very high chance that a nuclear test took place near Israel and South Africa in 1979 and that the United States covered it up for political reasons. The Vela incident, also known as the South Atlantic Flash, was an unidentified double flash of light detected by an American Vela Hotel satellite on September 22, 1979 near the Prince Edward Islands in the Indian Ocean. The cause of the flash remains officially unknown, and some information about the event remains classified. While it has been suggested that the signal could have been caused by a meteoroid hitting the satellite, the previous 41 double flashes detected by the Vela satellites were caused by nuclear weapons tests. Today, most independent researchers believe that the 1979 flash was caused by a nuclear explosion, perhaps an undeclared nuclear test carried out by South Africa and Israel. Original Coke. Apparently American Coca-Cola was made with sugar up until the 80s, but they wanted to change to a cheaper ingredient known as HFCS. Not wanting to make the change and have people in an uproar over the change in taste, Coca-Cola made New Coke, which tasted completely different, which did indeed cause criticism. The sneaky part is they said, "Yep, New Coke is a failure, here's your beloved original Coca-Cola back," except now that Coca-Cola is made with the cheaper HFCS, and tastes different to original sugar Coke, but still better than New Coke. That the term conspiracy theorists was coined by the CIA to make a mockery of people who put facts together out of loop of mainstream media to see what was happening behind the scenes. That turned into flat earthers, reptilian royals and whatever else falling under the same umbrella and skewering the public perception of theorists. Many theories prove true, for example the CIA funneling drugs into the USA, but they fall under the umbrella as moon landing fakes, so people don't really pay attention. Democrats and Republicans working together to spread propaganda that you can only be one or the other. Like, the idea that third parties are way too small to even have a chance of being elected, for president or for Congress, and therefore should be ignored. It makes sense because no one wants to waste their vote, so they won't vote for third parties. Third parties then have no power. That means Democrats and Republicans don't have to compromise with each other because they only have one competition, which is with each other. The USA government is funded by what amounts to a Ponzi scheme. 70% of the US debt is owed to its own citizens. We know there is no way to pay it all back. The reason we don't drastically reduce funding to the military is because it's our insurance against bankruptcy. As long as the military exists as it does, the USA can continue to borrow money without ever paying it back. Even though we talk about the US debt a lot, the real number and increases don't matter as much as people believe, because who is going to actually demand that the US pays it back? Debt as a private citizen is a problem because if you don't pay it, the government will F you. Nobody can F the US government because of the dichotomies of world power, USD reserve currency, military control and wealth distribution. And even besides the fact that you can't force the US to pay its debt, nobody wants to. Going through that exercise means worldwide financial ruin. Our globalist economy is a literal house of cards. You pull one or two major pieces out and it can all come crashing down. The Titanic didn't sink, the Olympic did. The story goes that after a disastrous maiden voyage of the Olympic, it would cost millions to repair in a time where 1 million was a lot of money. Its sister ship, Titanic, was still being built, so they hatched an insurance fraud scam. They swapped the nameplates between the two ships, labeled the Olympic as the Titanic, and set sail. They planned to take damage to the ship, have a nearby ship save everyone, collect the insurance money and party hard. Except there was a small boat illegally doing stuff in between the Titanic Olympic. So when the Titanic Olympic sent up flares for help, the other ship responded instead of the planned one, causing the messages to become confused. So the ship that was sent to save everyone was late and a lot of people died. On August 5, 1952, a car came to pick up Samira Mosa in Berkeley, California. The driver opened the door for the world-renowned scientist, who was the first ever female Egyptian nuclear scientist. The 35-year-old was the first woman to earn a doctorate in atomic radiation and the first woman to hold a teaching post at Cairo University thanks to her groundbreaking PhD in atomic radiation in the 1940s. Mosa sat in the back seat as they left the city and headed along the California coast. She had completed her research and was preparing to return to Egypt, but she had received an invitation for a dinner. Driving along the curved cliffs of the Pacific coast, the car suddenly swerved and plummeted 40 feet over the edge, killing her immediately. The driver jumped from the car just before the fall and later disappeared, and the invitation she received to California turned out to be fake. The death of the brilliant young physicist is shrouded in mystery. While no one knows for sure what happened, some suspect that was targeted by Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, to prevent Egypt from acquiring knowledge of nuclear technology, though it has never claimed responsibility. In fact, nuclear scientists, in particular, are a real threat to Israel. For a country that is currently in a state of nuclear ambiguity, that is, its possible possession of nuclear weapons has yet not been made clear, it would be dangerous to have an Arab neighbor with the same kind of weaponry. Worldwide pedo rings, and their involvement in Epstein's murder. I'm not talking about the Antarchrome story, that's just made-up BS. I believe that Epstein was murdered to cover up larger pedophile rings. Imagine this, you have a deal to expose all your clients, and have at least a little bit less strict prison sentence in exchange, and then you just hang yourself in your cell, when you have no way of knowing that the cameras are out, when no guards control your cell the way they should. Seems like there are too many coincidences in this one for it to be just a random self-ending. I saw some autopsy photos, discussed the matter with my dad, who is an ex-cop who saw a couple of similar victims, both saving them from the nooses, and on the table, and he said that he had never seen anyone with strangling marks in the middle of their neck that wasn't a murder, since most hanging victims have the marks right under their chin. If Epstein survived, and still gave out the list, it could have had a couple of added names, but there are pretty big chances that some of his clients might have been involved in other pedo rings, much larger than what his ring. It just doesn't add up. Some people don't think Kurt Cobain ended himself. The entire story always felt off to them, not to mention some of the harrowing details that seemed way too suspicious. Not really sure if Courtney Love was involved, but definitely might have been some foul play. One thing that really sticks out to me is what Krist Novoselic, the bass player, had to say about Kurt. Paraphrasing a lot here, but essentially the irreconcilable fact was that Kurt bought a shotgun shortly before he offed himself. Krist knew him better than just about anyone on the planet and said he wasn't interested in hunting. It wasn't bought for self-defense. Kurt wasn't like that. He bought the gun to end himself. And then he did. End of story. Honestly, the better conspiracy is that this conspiracy was made up by the Hollywood elite to turn people against Courtney Love, who had been vocal against Weinstein and others since long before his crimes were public knowledge. The Lost Cosmonauts. Subjects of a conspiracy theory alleging that Soviet cosmonauts went to outer space before Yuri Gagarin. But their existence has never been publicly acknowledged by either the Soviet or Russian space authorities. The government intentionally fuels the racial divide in America. The more you all keep fighting amongst yourselves and looking at each other as the enemy, the more they get away with effing you all over with little to no consequences. As Carlin says, now to balance the scale, I'd like to talk about some things that bring us together. Things that point out our similarities instead of our differences, cause that's all you ever hear about in this country, is our differences. That's all the media and the politicians are ever talking about. The things that separate us, things that make us different from one another. That's the way the ruling class operates in any society. They try to divide the rest of the people. They keep the lower and the middle classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the money. Fairly simple thing. Happens to work. You know, anything different, that's what they're gonna talk about: race, religion, ethnic and national background, jobs, income, education, social status, sexuality, anything they can do to keep us fighting with each other so that they can keep going to the bank. You know how I describe the economic and social classes in this country? The upper class keeps all of the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the hell out of the middle class. Keep on showing up at those jobs. The alien zoo theory. There are so many Earth-like planets in this galaxy alone that it's near impossible for them not to exist. It's also estimated that it would only take on average 3 million years from the birth of a planet for it to form a civilization. But then that raises the Fermi paradox: if they exist, where are they? And the answer to that, and the theory I'm talking about, is the zoo Earth theory. One theory that could well be true is that aliens have found Earth and are observing, waiting for us to develop further, and that in this process they are enforcing some sort of quarantine prohibiting other alien species from making contact. or us from finding them. The simulation hypothesis: hypothetically, a species could become so advanced to the point at which it can simulate the universe down to the subatomic particle. And eventually a chain of simulations forms as the simulation develops simulation technology sufficiently advanced to do so. Since we can't simulate a universe that accurately yet, we're either the original universe and this hypothesis is bogus, or we're the most recent in the chain and are going to continue the chain in our future. Since our computer tech is still advancing, I think there's no reason to assume that we can't begin or continue the chain. I guess the only way to disprove this hypothesis would be to find some way to prove that the universe can't be simulated so perfectly. Amelia Earhart didn't crash, she was shot down by the Japanese because she was taking spy photos for the US government. The timeline and geography makes sense, and other aviators of the time were approached with similar missions. That Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson are Michael Jackson's actual parents. That's why he was the talent in the Jackson family and why there were rumors that he was Evan Ross's father. They both look like Diana. Smokey would have been 18 and Diana 14 years old when Michael was born. So Berry Gordy arranged to have the kid given to his old boxing buddy and fellow musician from Chicago, Joe Jackson, who he would fund, leading to the formation of the Jackson 5. Joe had a big family where Michael would get everything he needs while training him to be an entertainer, and Motown could protect their image by taking the child out of the picture. It turns out the kid is a talent, and as we all know, the Jackson 5 make it to Motown. But even before that there were several documented instances of Diana Ross in Gary, Indiana, such as at the school talent show where the Jackson 5 performed. She has said multiple times on live television that Michael is her child, says she's doing it all for him, and joked about him playing her son in a future movie. She has also said publicly she was in love with Smokey Robinson growing up, living on the same street as him in Detroit, which is odd because he had a girlfriend during that time who he later married. Diana also changed high schools around the time Michael was conceived, when she would have gotten pregnant. She was going to Cass Tech to study home economics, and Smokey also enrolled in an engineering college around this time, because they were soon to be parents and Motown hadn't broke big yet. A decade later the Jackson 5 auditioned for Motown in Detroit, then did a second performance at a Motown get-together at Barry's house, and Michael has stated that at the point Diana told them she wanted to take special interest in their career. There's a movie called Double Platinum which stars Diana Ross and is about how she gave up her kid for her career and later reveals to the kid she's her mother when she sees that the kid has talent, then goes on to help her with her career, which would parallel the real-life story with Michael. Her daughter in the movie also wears a dress that has the same design as the shirt Michael wore for Billie Jean at Motown 25. It's written by Michael in his autobiography Moonwalk that he and the Jacksons lived with Diana Ross in Hollywood Hills when the Jackson 5 first signed to Motown and moved to LA, and her and Michael used to go out almost every day, just the two of them. This would have been when Diana Ross revealed to Michael she's his mom. He would have been about 10 years old, and that's why he became quiet and shy from then on. This wouldn't be her only time doing this. When she had a daughter with Berry Gordy, she didn't tell her who her father was until she was 13. Smokey Robinson also stated, when he was leaving the Larry King interview shortly after Michael passed away, that one of his fondest memories of Michael was when he used to go golfing at the age of 10 or 11 with him and Bobby Taylor, who is said to have discovered the Jackson 5, even though their first album at Motown was presented by Diana Ross. This was also what Michael meant in the song Billie Jean when this happened much too soon. She called me to her room. Diana was the one who said I am the one, but the kid is not my son. She meant I am your mother but you're not my son, you're a Jackson now. Diana Ross is Billie Jean. Diana plays a character called Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues, which came out a few years before The Wiz with MJ. This is also what the song Dirty Diana is about. It's about Diana Ross, the groupie who seduces Smokey Robinson, who she grew up on the same street as, conceiving Michael. Then there's the song, Who Is It, which is about a mystery person who abandoned Michael, and in the music video he holds a card that says Diana. The song Wanna Be Startin' Something also talks about how if you can't feed your baby, then don't have a baby, and again refers to the mystery Billie Jean character. He references Ain't No Mountain High Enough in the song Leave Me Alone and says don't you come walkin' begging back, mama. He also references Ain't No Mountain High Enough in the songs Baby Be Mine, Speechless, and Keep the Faith. This is also why you see a weird sexual dynamic between Michael Jackson and Diana Ross, but you will never actually see a picture or video of them making out. Recently a video surfaced of Diana Ross singing You Are Not Alone to Katherine Jackson, Just like how she probably used to sing Ain't No Mountain High Enough to Michael when he was living with her. This is seen in the aforementioned movie Double Platinum as well. Diana sings her lost daughter to sleep with a famous song. And in TMZ's video the last time we saw Joe Jackson, an old senile Joe says, "I raised Michael, he's my son and Quincy Jones knows better. I don't talk about it, no way." He's defending the supposed fact that Michael is his son for a seemingly unknown reason, and even in past interviews he always emphasized he's a Jackson. After MJ's death, Joe, when interviewed, said he was doing great. Meanwhile, Smokey Robinson went on the Larry King Show and praised MJ as an artist. This theory explains why Michael not only looks like Diana Ross and has the same features and eyes as her, but also explains why his facial structure looks like Smokey's and their profiles and ears are completely identical. And why he was a musical prodigy who had the stage presence and songwriting abilities of his real parents. Diana, Smokey and Michael are the only three musicians besides the Beatles who have 2 stars each on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. One for being a member of their original groups and one to celebrate their success as a solo artist, as well as having a very soft voice, which both Smokey and Diana, and Evan Ross, have in common. You can see how much different his eyes looked from his brothers and how much they look like Ross' eyes. Now you can see why his personality developed the way it did. It's why he acted like an orphan and called himself Peter Pan and built Neverland to help disadvantaged kids. Why he isolated himself from his family and could never manage to have a normal relationship with women. It absolutely explains why he had such a severe identity crisis. And it explains why Diana Ross is second to Katherine Jackson in his will regarding who would take care of his children, and why Joe Jackson has been known to dislike Diana Ross. At Michael Jackson's public memorial, the first person that comes out is Smokey Robinson reading a letter from Diana Ross, who writes that she's mourning so hard that she cannot attend the memorial and that Michael was part of the fabric of her life. When Smokey speaks about MJ later, he calls him his little brother, which would imply blood relative. In the movie Hitsville, USA, The Making of Motown, Berry Gordy jokes with Smokey about how some of the babies that the groupies were having were his and that MJ reminded him of Little Smokey. Also, the movie An American Dream was about the Jackson 5 and would have been propaganda to reinforce the cover-up story. So, it wasn't that Michael was ever trying to look like Diana Ross like people thought. He was actually displaying features and mannerisms that he inherited from her. In one of the clips below she says he has the same features, skin tone, and bone structure as her. Now you might say, well, Janet looks a lot like MJ, but growing up in his shadow she adopted many of his mannerisms and used makeup and plastic surgery to replicate his appearance, like LaToya did, but their vanity was merely deception. Joe and Barry branded and marketed the Jacksons a certain way to make Michael seem related, such as with the matching outfits and afros, but if you look at their features it's clear the only similarity to Michael is the way they smile, a learned trait. MJ has much more defined features and is rail thin like Diana Ross, and his nose and chin match Smokey's. Now it's clear why Joe told him he had a fat nose and singled him out so much with the abuse. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for a free bottle of original Coke. Click the right box for the conspiracy playlist. Let us know in the comments what you think about these theories.